My name is Nesma, and I'm joined today by Sophia, and we will be your hosts for today. Today's podcast was organized by Free Your Mind Initiative. Free Your Mind is a youth-based organization dedicated to promoting mental health awareness.
Before we begin, we would like to acknowledge and honor the traditional territories of the Blackfoot and the Treaty 7 people, including the Siksika, Biguni, Gainwa, Tsuut'ina, and Stoney Nakoda First Nations. Calgary is also home to the Métis Nation of Alberta Region 3. Finally, we acknowledge all nations, Indigenous and non, who live, work, play, and help us steward this land, honor, and celebrate this territory.
We are joined today by Jay, Ashley, and Noura, who all come from diverse educational backgrounds. Today we'll be discussing testing strategies and the anxiety that can arise from academics. We will give the speakers the floor to tell us a little bit more about themselves. Jay, you can start us off if you'd like.
Hi, my name is Jay. I'm a grade 12 student at Crescent Heights High.
Hi, everyone. My name is Noura. I'm also a grade 12 student going into post-secondary this fall.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ashley Liu. I'm also a grade 12 student at Henry Wisewood.
Thank you very much. We are very excited to speak with you all today.
So test anxiety is quite common amongst students, with about 16 to 20% of students having high levels of test anxiety, according to the American Test Anxiety Association. Whether high or moderate, we would like to provide our young audience with some potential tips and strategies to overcome test anxiety and maintain motivation throughout stressful examination periods. With this purpose in mind, we have gathered a few questions to discuss on this topic. And the first question we have for today is, what are your most effective studying tips, and what are your most effective test taking strategies as well? Anyone can start.
For me personally, best studying tip that I guess I've experienced through high school is kind of understanding what your learning style is. Understanding if you learn through tactile, auditory, visual, or reading, writing. And for me, it was reading and writing. Being able to study all the notes and then writing them down again helped me. But for many people, that's not the same case. Some people can act in an activity and understand the concepts more. So just figuring out what your learning style is helps a lot with studying for tests. And as for test techniques or the best things to do during tests or to study for tests, I guess the same thing. And during tests, it would just be kind of, honestly, I'm terrible at tests too. I have huge amounts of anxiety when I'm giving tests. There was a time I almost passed out in the middle of giving a test. So like keep food around, keep water around, things or any fidgety toys around, something that can help you focus back into the space or just focus back on what you're studying or what you're trying to accomplish. That would kind of be the best way to get through a test or studying.
I guess I could go next. For my most effective study tips, especially for subjects like bio or history or any sort of subject that requires lots of memorization, as someone who prefers to write out their notes as well, I make these little summary sheets. So as I'm going through the class notes or PowerPoints, I wouldn't rewrite every single point on there. Like for the individual points that I already know and have memorized, I wouldn't write them down. Usually if I'm reading through something and if I find something I don't know particularly well, I'd go on Google and search that up as well. So clearing up all the confusion and getting a deeper understanding of the subject would definitely help with memorization. In terms of such subjects like math or science, like chemistry, those would require a lot more practice. So for me, I'd search up practice papers online, practice questions, and that sort of thing. As for effective test-taking strategies, thankfully, I don't actually get a lot of test anxiety. It's only if I'm not very well prepared, then I get really anxious. But I usually try to keep a bottle of water beside me, and I underline and circle a lot of critical words in a question, just so I don't read over something too fast and make silly mistakes.
I'll go next. So for me, something that I found incredibly useful, just because, I don't know, for me, whenever I write down notes, like I've noticed when I write down notes on like, a piece of paper or whatever it might be, it's, I don't know, to me, it's just very overwhelming. It's a lot of words. So what I like to do is just have cue cards and just write down the main ideas. And this can be for any subject like chemistry, math, bio, just like write down main concepts, examples of questions that I'm going to see a lot. And then just kind of referring back to those notes when I need them has been super helpful in terms of like, remembering and just kind of understanding. Just because I find when there's too much, to focus on, you tend to kind of have a difficult time in seeing like what is the most important thing, what are the main concepts that I need to focus on. And so splitting up topics into smaller parts is a really great way for me to avoid anxiety and feeling overwhelmed. The best piece of advice that I've ever gotten from someone in terms of like test taking though, is collecting old material, like old quizzes, just like practice questions, and just kind of predicting what kind of questions you're going to see most likely on a test and focusing on those questions. Because I know that sometimes when you're, taking an exam for bio, there's a lot of topics and stuff. Or if you're taking like a, chemistry exam or a physics exam, there's just a lot of topics. And so it's kind of figuring out like what is the most important thing that I need to learn and the things that I need to focus on so that I get, the best mark possible, or so that I can learn the most information possible in X amount of time. Yeah, those are my strategies.
Yeah, thank you all three. Yeah, those are definitely strategies that I've been recommended as well. To whether use cue cards or write down short notes during presentations, or even during exams, just to come in prepared or come in with whatever necessary. If it's a snack or just water, just be prepared. I think those are definitely effective ways that have been recommended to me as well. So now on to our next question. How do you recognize errors you've made during study, during your academic study, and how do you deal with it? This time, Ashley, you can go first.
Okay, thank you. A lot of my errors, I'd have to go back through the test. Like, for example, during lunches or class time when the tests are handed back, that's when I usually find all the errors. And what I usually like to do is, if we're allowed, of course, I'd take a separate piece of paper and write down where I got things wrong and what I need to I sort of categorize my mistakes into something I need to review and remember, or like something fundamentally wrong with my understanding of the topic itself. Yeah. And other times, for example, in math tests, I'd have to actually go back to the teacher and ask how they would go through the question. And then that would help with my understanding as well.
Anybody can feel free to jump in, Nura, Jay.
I think with academic errors, it's usually whenever there is one, I think it just comes down to like figuring out, okay, like where did I not necessarily go wrong? Because there's, usually most people go into a test prepared, but I guess there's some things that, obviously you're going to overlook. And so just looking at areas like where you weren't very strong in like the weak areas in a test, for example, and then just kind of figuring out, okay, well, this is what I need to focus on for next time. Because I don't know if this was everybody, but for me, our teachers let us have test retakes and stuff. And so, in the future, kind of understanding what went wrong and then just implementing, the questions, and yeah, just asking for help in general as well. Like if you just sit down with the teacher and say, okay, well, this is where I went wrong. What can I do to get a better mark next time? Or, can I repeat this test? Because usually they're pretty generous with it. I mean, at least mine were. And so, yeah, just kind of figure out where you went wrong, communicating with your educators. Yeah, that sort of thing, I guess.
Yeah.
I guess here, sorry. You could go.
Yeah. For me personally, I've seen that teachers are pretty generous in talking about or talking through tests for students, especially when you get things wrong. Just going to a teacher and asking how I can fix this, or what can I do to get better at fixing the issue that has occurred, usually helps a lot. And if that is not the case, if you don't have a teacher that does that, for sure you could kind of write it down somewhere and just go back to your notes or your textbook and just look through that to figure out where you went wrong and fix it that way. Otherwise, there's not much to be done in academic errors because either it's the teacher or back to your notes. That's usually the two options that you have, but yeah.
I believe, Ashley, you were going to say something?
Oh, I was just going to add, like, this is where practice tests come in handy, so you wouldn't make the same mistakes on the actual test.
And yeah, actually, that was what was going through my mind as well. Nazma, you can go on and ask the next question.
Yeah, like learning's all about growth, right? So it's really important that we like recognize our errors and like say it's okay if we screwed up once or twice and just to move forward, you know? So that being said, like what are some things that you think people should fully avoid when studying or taking tests?
I would say,
Right.
Sorry, what were you gonna say?
I was just gonna say, go ahead. That's all.
Oh yeah. I don't know, I think overthinking is a big one, or just like having just being in a negative mind space. I know, even I do this a lot where, you go into something, a test or whether it's, a research project or something, and you go into it thinking, well, this is the mark that I've gotten in the past, this is the mark I'm going to get, and just kind of getting rid of that mentality and just going into it like, okay, well, I'm going to do my absolute best. And, because I think mindset is a big one as well. If you look at things in terms of grades and, I have to do this perfectly and, I've gotten this in the past and this is how it's been. Usually, you're looking at it from a place of worry. And so you're kind of judging the situation before actually, you can't try your best when you've already judged the situation. You've already gone, well, I'm going to do this much on a test. So I think for me, just kind of getting rid of that mindset and going into, future situations thinking, well, I'm going to try my absolute best and, what happens, happens.
Oh, I really liked what you brought up about the mindset, and I fully agree. And something else that I think people shouldn't do is that a lot of times I find groups of friends and like students around me, they like start stressing about a large test at the same time together. Like if you were to find a close friend who is able to ground you and remind you that no, this test isn't the end of the world if you do bad on it, and maybe you don't score as high as the previous time, but it's not as bad of a mark as you may think. Like again, to minimize the catastrophizing and also not to like panic with your friends and increase that anxiety before you get in.
Yeah, I definitely agree with both of you. I feel like overthinking about a test or an exam causes so much, it causes you to overthink while you're doing the exam as well. Like, let's say you're doing a multiple choice, you have 4 answers, you pick one, and then you just overthink the question again and again and again, and you pick another one. And usually it's, even in my teacher's advice, I've heard this multiple times, that you'll get it wrong the second time because of the fact that you'll overthink and do it multiple times, getting different answers and picking one that might be wrong. So just trying not to overthink. And I know how hard it is to not overthink or stop your mind from just going on and on and on. But just trying to figure out ways to ground yourself, to put yourself in a space like, you know what, I'll be fine, whatever happens, because there's always a next chance to improve wherever you went wrong or got something wrong. And especially when it comes to tests, there are always opportunities to kind of change your mark, get an upgrade, or get a different assignment to do in opposition to that mark. But yeah, just trying to keep yourself at a calm kind of space where it's like, it's fine. It happens, and it'll go forward and get better. It is very, very important.
I also wanted to add like meditation or taking deep breaths before a test would work really well. Or for the people who don't prefer a meditation, like usually doing something physical or like focusing on your body would help steer your mind away from those anxieties that keep on popping up.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up, Ashley. I think, for me, I was someone who, I was the last person in this world probably to do, yoga or meditation or anything like that. But I found that it's not necessarily the meditation, but it's the deep breathing that I think is really important. I don't know. I think when you have anxiety, it's like almost like you can't breathe, or that feeling at least of you can't breathe. And so kind of just like stepping back and, just walking around, even if you're just in your house studying, just walking around and just like taking a few deep breaths and just telling yourself like it's going to be fine. As corny as that sounds, it's really helpful.
Yes, definitely. I think it's definitely another aspect to the breathing exercise is definitely giving yourself a little bit of control, because a lot of times when you're very anxious, you feel like, oh, sometimes you tend to feel powerless. And I feel like breathing kind of reminds you that you have power over your body, you have power over your mind. And I think that's kind of the thing about doing the meditation. And additionally too, I think another tip is to get good sleep, because you just don't want to feel too tired when you're taking, especially a very big test. You want to just be able to remember everything. Yeah, and then with that, I will actually go to the next question. So, test of course comes with pressure, and grades come with pressure as well. So, how do you deal with academic pressure as well as anxiety from test taking? This time, I will call on Jay to come to speak first.
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Sorry, okay, my apologies. How do you deal with academic pressure, or or anxiety, academic pressure or anxiety? How do you deal with that?
For academic pressure, I think for me, that aspect of it comes from my family more than just school in general, because like my family sets up such high expectations to like, oh, you need to get 90s, you need to get this much. And if I get 94, my dad's first question will be, where are the rest 6%? So I guess just figuring out what is your best option or the best you can do, just understanding that whatever you got on a certain test or assignment is because you put in your best instead of trying to fulfill someone else's expectations, because they're not the one giving the test or doing the assignment. It's all on you. And if you know that you did the best, I don't think anybody else's perspective on your work matters too much. Just kind of understand yourself that, you know what, at this time, it was the best I could do. And then just keep your mindset there. And as hard as it is, it's the best way to kind of figure it out. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's just putting things in perspective, because even if you don't do the best on this test, like realistically, what is the best? I mean, what is the worst, thing that could possibly happen to you? It's just putting it in perspective of like, even if I, do bad on this one test, what is that? Was that going to say anything about me? And so, yeah, just, not necessarily, because I think also, parental pressure is also huge, especially, in minority communities and stuff. Parents do put high expectations on people. I mean, their kids especially. And so kind of just, stepping back and realizing like, I am not this test. I'm so much more than that. And so, okay, I failed this test. Like, what does that say about me? That, as long as I did my best, I think, and I remember I saw this YouTube video a while ago. I can't remember exactly what the girl said, but she was like, just kind of putting things in perspective of like, what does it say about me? As long as I did my best, then, I have, a rule to myself. Well, as long as I did my best, then, I'm not my test. I'm not this test. I'm so much more than that. And so even if I did bad or failed a class or whatever it was, in 5 years, is it going to matter? Or 10 years, am I even going to remember this? And so I think just putting things in perspective so that you in this moment can see it. Because I know sometimes it's hard to understand, in this specific moment, like things just seem so big to us. But, in 2 years or 5 years, it's not going to matter.
Yeah, I totally agree. This is something I do quite often too, where I like hyper focus on a single test. Like, oh no, I'm 1% away from whatever mark that I wanted. And then I start getting anxious about that specific thing, when it honestly wouldn't have mattered in 5 years. Even if I had got 98 or 100, it wouldn't matter. And for the people who do not score as well as they might have hoped, there are more ways to succeed in life than you may think. And honestly, I barely know a thing about it either. But all I know is that things will turn out okay. Like if everyone focuses and works hard on what they can do and they focus on preparing themselves the best way that they can, like things will turn out fine.
Yeah, definitely. And like everyone's sources of academic pressures can vary from person to person, whether that's from family or from like wanting to achieve something or just like something personal. And so like in hindsight to the past tests you've taken and just dealing with academic pressure and anxiety, I'm going to ask like, what do you do to maintain motivation even if you do bad in a test or you have experienced a failure despite putting in all your effort? Noor, you can go first.
Sorry, do you mind repeating the question?
Yeah, of course. So what do you do to maintain motivation even when you do not do as well as you expected on a test or examination?
Motivation is a sticky word for me, I think, because, I don't think that, honestly, I don't know. For me, it's motivation comes and goes. So, I can't stay motivated, honestly, for longer than a week. Like, I think that's probably, or even 9 days. Like, I don't think I could do more than that, to be honest, just because I think it's a momentarily, like a moment or a temporary thing kind of thing, just because I don't know. I think motivation is just, it's like, how to explain it? It's, I have a test coming up. I need to kind of, grind and cram all this information. Like that's motivation to me. Whereas I think discipline, for example, sitting down for at least 2 hours every single day and doing homework or doing practice questions or whatever it might be, is just a better solution for me. And so that's what I think. I think that'd be my answer. Yeah, just because I think motivation just comes and goes. It's just temporary. And so I think disciplining yourself and telling yourself like, hey, like I have an end goal. What is it? And how do I get there? And just kind of understanding like I need to put in a certain amount of work in order to fulfill these demands. If you have a goal or whatever it might be.
I guess adding on to that would be to take proper guilt-free breaks. This would definitely help you recover a lot more energy, and even if you do not find as high levels of motivation to complete a task, you would still be able to sit down and complete it.
Yeah, I definitely agree with the breaks thing because for me, in high school, I think one of the hardest things to accept was the fact that I can have like a full-on breakdown when it comes to having zero motivation for long periods of time. And it was just, I was so overloaded with all my work and whenever I took a break, I was so guilty. But then there came a time where for a long period of time, I couldn't do anything because I couldn't focus even for 15 minutes because of the fact that my mind was so tired. So understanding that, sometimes you can burn out and you need breaks, even in a general schedule, maybe 15 minutes a day. You just do something that is totally separate from all your work. I think that will help motivation kind of rise up even more because you know that there's maybe an award at the end of 2 hours of studying. You'll get an hour of just general free time. You can keep that as an incentive to do work or keep motivation up or figure out ways to kind of fuel your motivation. Like, well, giving yourself incentives would kind of be the best thing to fuel your motivation, but otherwise, motivation is kind of like the Calgary weather. One day there will be a blizzard of it, and the next day it'll be super, super sunny. So it's just, it comes and goes, and you need to kind of learn to accept the fact that that's going to happen, but just figuring out how you can keep your motivation to a place where you understand that, yeah, you'll need a 10-minute break after 40 minutes of studying will be the best to kind of keep it up. And yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Because I remember in grade 10, I used to think, oh, I'm going to be super motivated. I'm going to get really high marks on every single one of my courses. Because back in grade 10, like, I had no idea about the amount of workload that I have to go through. So, and I feel like a lot of students, not just me, thought that motivation determined the amount of work that I could do each day, when honestly, you just have to sit yourself down and calm your mind so that you could sit out and do the amount of work you have to do. Get maybe one or two things, two priority tasks on your to-do list checked off, and that would be it.
adding on to,
I guess what I'm trying to say.
oh, sorry. My bad.
No worries. You can go.
No, it's all good. I'll let you finish.
I was just kind of wrapping it up, saying that as long as you get the most important tasks done, it's all right to rest.
Yeah, exactly. And, I think adding on to what you said as well is just giving yourself, incentives to kind of, go on and giving yourself kind of rewards so that, you're able to go on and finish your task, because I think also, if you think about it, I don't know where I read this, but it's like, it has something to do with dopamine. And so if you kind of manipulate your body in a way kind of to continue working, like, okay, I'm going to get this thing done. And if I do this, then I'll give myself, an hour-long break to go watch, Netflix or something. Or, if I get this project done, then I'll go out with my friends later. So I think for me, that's what helped. Just because sitting down and, cramming in like 6, 7, 8 hours of work in a day, I mean, I can do it, but I feel like it doesn't really help much for me personally. I know it's different for everybody. A lot of people can get work done, cramming and stuff, but I just wasn't able to do that. And so I had to kind of give myself like, okay, I'll give myself breaks. I'll get this done with.
Yeah, and at some point it loses its efficiency, right? As someone who likes to work for long hours and then take long breaks, I still wouldn't be able to maintain the same amount of productivity like throughout the entire work period.
Yeah, exactly. Just because I mean, it's nice if you think about it, because it's, I feel like sometimes, especially as students, we get like, how long is it really when your teacher is like, okay, we have a project to do, it's Friday and you have to get it done by Monday. And, you kind of have to cram essentially, because even if you do get like 2 hours done every single day, you won't, have the level of work that, you need to have to get, this percent or whatever it is. So sometimes it's just like, you have to sit down and work on it, and finish it up. And sometimes, we have, different situations in life where it's like, I kind of procrastinated for 2 days and now I have to finish everything on Sunday. I want to get this done. So, it's definitely different for everybody, but I think giving yourself breaks and not cramming is definitely something that's more efficient than cramming, but sometimes you can't help but cram. So.
All right, thank you very much. And thank you very, very much for your responses. So, so I know you've given us a lot of advice so far, you three, but do you have any other advice related to the topic that you want to share that maybe you haven't gotten the opportunity to share based on the questions we've asked so far? Is there anything you'd like to share with our audience concerning the topic?
Sure. One thing that I wanted to mention was whenever I would get extremely overwhelmed due to a lot of deadlines as well as projects going on during the same week, this may not work for everyone, but I like to visually see all of the tasks that I have to do. So I would write them all out on a sheet of paper and sort of word vomit onto the paper. So it wouldn't be floating around in my head and I wouldn't have to worry about forgetting one of them. So after that's out of the way, I would organize the tasks in levels of urgency, like prioritizing them in a sense. And yeah, that would significantly calm my anxiety. I know some people prefer not to do that because a large to-do list tends to increase more anxiety for some people, but that was what worked for me.
Yeah. So it definitely depends. If you like to see visible like check-off lists, then that's your take. And if you like otherwise, then you can take your own method as well. Nora and Jay, anything else you'd like to say before we conclude the podcast?
Yeah, I think to-do lists, like Ashley said, are actually quite a great way. Like even for me, they work quite well. Like the check off thing, it's just like a boost of motivation. Like, oh God, I got this done finally. And it's a great way to kind of keep yourself in check. For some people, it doesn't work. It causes more anxiety or more stress, and that is absolutely fine. Just find ways that kind of make you happier to do things. maybe write them on sticky notes, put them on a wall, and it just becomes like a colorful blob of circle. And just take them off when you're done with the task. That could work. Just figure out the best things that work for you. Or if you like to keep a mindset in your general classrooms of the X number of marks you need to get a certain mark at the end of the year, just check in with your teacher for extra assignments, or if she or he or they will give you any retests at the end of the semester, so you kind of already know what you're doing or where you're trying to get to. That way it can help you maybe find some peace in the fact that, okay, this test I got 65%, but I have a retest, so in that test I need to focus on this, and I can do better next time. So just figure out ways to keep the craziness that goes on in the test anxiety phase of your mind to the most minimum to kind of help you through the work you're going through right now. And that will kind of be the best thing to do. And if that doesn't work, just take a break, have chocolate, have ice cream, have anything sweet or anything that makes you happier for the minute or for the time being, and just go on from there.
Yeah, and just preparing yourself for what the demands are, for the semester or for the term that you have, like the classes that you have, just kind of, for me, writing down like, okay, well, I need to do this much every single day. Like just planning for me was really essential just because it helped me kind of get the visual of what I need to get done in that minute, or not in that minute, and, for the term or the semester, it really helped out for me. And also just like not overthinking and worrying about how to study perfectly and what should be my, strategies, how much should I do every single day, and just kind of just getting started even, and just, seeing, because there's gonna be days where you can't study, and that's okay. So just taking breaks and kind of not worrying about, did I get 8 hours of studying done today, and tomorrow I need to do this much, and, just thinking about it from a place of, I'm going to do my best and I'm going to get as much as I can today done was really helpful for me.
Yeah, and I think getting started and getting in the zone, quote unquote, is the hardest for me. Whenever I do get into that zone and I find myself actually being more motivated to work because I started first, despite being tired earlier in the day. I try to get as much work done as possible let me reword that. I try to get most of my work done earlier so that I wouldn't have to cram it all in a short amount of time at the end of the week, for example, or the day before the deadline. Honestly, sometimes you find yourself cramming the day before the deadline too, but I mean, get up and keep going, I guess. Prepare for the next deadline.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. Like the hardest part is getting started and actually getting in the zone. I think just because there's so much anxiety surrounding that, and I have to do this, and you're worrying about how to do it, and you're not actually going and doing it. And so getting started is the hardest part. But once you're there, I think everything gets easier.
Even if it's something as simple as like labeling the first chapter of notes in your notebook or typing a single line in your essay, as long as you've started, it'll be a lot easier to keep going.
All right, thank you so much. So on a conclusive note, I'd once again like to thank all of Free Your Mind events team members for all of Free Your Mind's events team members who were able to make it here today. We hope the ideas you shared were as helpful and inspirational to those that could tune in as they were with us. If you would like to participate as a speaker at our next podcast or webinar, feel free to sign up using the link in our Instagram bio at Free Your Mind YYC. You can always contact us with questions and new ideas through our email at info@freeyourmind.com or through our Instagram as well. Thank you so much for listening to our conversation today, and we hope to see you at more Free Your Mind events in the future. Thank you so much, as well as thank you to our guests, Ashley, Nura, and Jay, for being lovely enough to talk with us today.